r/AskReddit by Redmond Dts. People who have rage quit a job on the spot. What happened? I told my boss I was miscarrying and needed to go to the hospital. She said I needed to wait until the end of my shift. I was a receptionist for a real estate agency. I walked out and never came back. I asked my boss if she could give me a schedule instead of expecting me to be on call from 6 in the morning to 10 at night Monday to Sunday. She acted like I was asking her for 6 months of paid time off and then said no, and I never went back. Retail, 2 weeks before Christmas. I live somewhere it snows a lot and at the time took the bus to work. The roads were very bad and the buses were running late. My phone was dead. The battery didn't keep a charge very long anymore, but I couldn't afford a new one. I run in as fast as I can, apologize profusely and explain. My boss tears me a new one. Fine, I brush it off and get on the sales floor quickly. I picked up every shift dropped at this place. I was only part-time and I needed the money. I could be relied on to come in last minute just about always. I was never late or missed shifts, ever. This was the first time. I see her take out the schedule binder, which reminds me I have a doctor's appointment the following week. I tell her the day and time. She asks me what it's for. I pause, because that's a weird thing to ask, but also because where I live you can't ask by law. I tell her that's none of her business and she can't ask me that. She tells me if I'm going to screw her over at Christmas, it is her business. That was it. I marched to the back room, got my things, and walked right out saying now you're screwed, and flipped her the bird. I really needed that job and the money, but I didn't need to be treated that way. Not long after, that manager was fired. The new replacement called me to come back, and I did. I was working at a restaurant, and a few of the staff told me the owner will sometimes mess with their timesheets, and to watch out for that. Upon hearing that, I immediately went to the owner and told him I don't take that sort of thing lightly. He assured me that he would never do that, and I went back to work, but kept all my punch receipts. Payday comes, and I see my check was rounded down, something small like 0.27, from 40.27 down to 40 or something. I go straight to the owner and told him I quit. He starts yelling, that's only like 50 cents, I need you tomorrow. And I say, that's my 50 cents. I told you don't mess with my money, then walked out. I was in a call center, selling mobiles and mobile subscriptions. I was real good at it as well, but after about a year the burnout was real. It was a summer day, and my friends were out day drinking not even 500 meters away. At lunch, the boss pulls us all into our after lunch meeting. He starts calling me out for not calling enough, not talking long enough, and not selling enough. Right in front of everybody. He ended the sentence with, do you even wanna be here? And to be honest, a light bulb just turned on in my head. I told him no I did not, took my jacket and left. The best mic drop moment I've had. My co-workers called me after and told me he just stood there in disbelief. And I of course went day drinking with my friends instead. Best day ever. My new team leader was an idiot and an unpleasant person, so I was thinking about leaving anyway, but the final straw was her firing someone for taking too many days off for his chemotherapy. When it was announced, I just stood up, told her she was a terrible person, and that I quit, and left. Then phoned my partner on the way home to explain why I was now unemployed. Very long time ago now, and it all worked out in the end. Last time I heard, the guy was still fit and healthy, so all is well. I was 15 and my parents made me get my first job at a local chain store. I was in charge of walking around for 8 hours per day and facing the shelves, which basically meant all of the product was at the front of the shelves. The manager of my department was a guy who seemed to be a journeyman for the company, contracted to move from store to store. His personal skills were lacking, and it was obvious, even when I was 15. Imagine a man who looked like Bam Margera and was sober, wearing a polo and always walked fast. Anyways, I was on the floor facing the shelves, and a guy I worked with, older than me, probably like 2024, and he needed the job. We were talking to each other quietly as we were doing a task right next to each other. Nobody was around. Bam walked by and immediately summoned us to the back of the store. I knew we were in trouble by the way he spoke to us. The guy proceeded to explain to us we are never allowed to talk during our work. I don't know how to explain it, but something about the way he spoke felt like being scolded by an angry principal. Before I could say a word, the guy I worked with was extremely apologetic and said he was sorry and it won't happen again. Bam looks at me for a similar apology and I told him, "F you," and I walked out. Not sure if I'm the asshole in this situation, but I was 15 and I was pissed and a no talking at work policy seemed unreasonable. Not me, but my husband, before we got married. He was paid a flat salary, no overtime pay, but he was promised time off in place of overtime. He worked non-stop. I mean, there were days when he wouldn't go home. He'd just work through from 8 AM to past midnight the next night. His record there was 110 hours worked in 1 week. He would go home to feed the cat or get groceries. They wouldn't even let him go home to shower when he pulled all-nighters. One time he asked me to shave his head in the garden because he didn't have time to go to the barber, and while I was doing it, I realized he'd fallen asleep. While I was shaving his head with those clipper things that are loud and vibrate against your skull. He took a day off once, and his one manager even went to his house to find out why he wasn't at work, even though he'd notified the office. His landlord yelled at the guy and accused him of slavery. Anyway, he eventually lost it one night. He was told to work overtime to meet an insane deadline for a massive national event that was coming up, and when he expressed frustration about something, the other manager took his glasses off, got in his face, and asked, "Do you want to hit me?" So he put his office keys on the desk and said, "F you, you're on your own," and walked. The manager was stressed. Calling him, begging him, offered him 10 grand just to work that night. He even called me and begged me to convince my husband to go back to work. I told him to eat shit. My non-verbal autistic client was becoming increasingly aggressive because her dipshit dad was insisting that her direct support professionals, 2 other women and me, take her out for a total of 10 hours a day. Sometimes people just want to relax and be at home, and she was no different. Anyway, she suddenly freaked out and grabbed me by the hair and started yanking me around in the middle of JCPenney. A stranger had to help calm her down and get her off of me. At this point, I was 2 months behind in being paid, and her dad kept telling me the money was coming. I wasn't going to accept getting beat up at work for free, so I drove her ass home, left her with her brother because the dad was out of town at a conference, and quit. I told the woman who worked the shift after me about what happened, and she quit in solidarity with me. My manager verbally berated one of my co-workers and friends for running drinks from the bar instead of being at the host stand. She was asked by another manager to help run drinks, and this manager was so abusive it brought this sweet girl who was just trying to help to tears. I decided right there I was done, but wanted a little petty revenge on top. They were always short on bartenders, and I was the only one scheduled in the bar the following night on a Friday. I came in 20 minutes before my shift and told that manager that I won't be working as of now because of the way she treats her employees. Worked for the city of Manhattan Beach, sweeping the Strand from El Porto to Hermosa Beach. There was a crew of 4 of us and our supervisor, a woman whose name escapes me now. She wasn't the problem. Her boss was the problem. He micromanaged all of us every day. No matter what we did, we were doing it wrong. What the F was wrong with us? What a bunch of loser assholes. Just what you'd expect from a loser city that allowed effing bitches to be hired, etc etc etc. One day, I'd had enough. I said, "This is bullshit." I'm going to quit. My friend Dan said, hey, you can't quit without me quitting. His brother Rob said, you can't quit without me quitting. The other guy Tom was like, well fudge, if you're all going to quit, I'm going to quit too. And our supervisor was like, hey, you can't all quit just like that. Oh wait, you can, fudge it. I'm going back to college in 3 weeks anyway. Let's go. We got in the maintenance truck, drove to the city building, and quit en masse. And true to form, our supposed manager basically laughed at us and said, I'll have a new crew hired by Monday. We later found out he got fired, which was nice, but we still weren't gonna go back because it was a shit job anyway. Small non-profit hired a new COO who sucked up to the director. Director liked having her ego stroked and made our lives hell to give in to COO's whims. The last mail was when she mocked my boss, a very qualified, hard-working, kind, and efficient program head, because she was taking care of her extremely sick husband at the height of COVID and caught COVID herself. Director called my boss lazy for actually resting during her sick leave, unlike our COO, who was apparently still working while sick. COO tested positive, but had no symptoms, and she was only signing documents, which my boss had prepared, while actually being in bed with fever. The director didn't know this. Furthermore, the director said, this is how it's going to be from now on. If you don't like it, I want your resignation by the end of the day. Half of the total staff quit on spot. F that lady and her suck up team. All of us are much better off now. My boss wanted my co-worker to come to work the day after her best friend got murdered. I quit, so we couldn't open. I was sick of working 95-hour weeks with zero appreciation. I got called on the carpet for someone else's mistake and they blamed me. I was like, oh hell no, and quit on the spot. They called me being very apologetic a week later and asked me to come back. They were going to have to hire 2 people to do my job. Technical writer, who always made the deadlines, even if I was up for 2 days straight. So, I negotiated a pretty big raise, a title and an extra week vacation per year. I stayed another 3 years. A new restaurant owner forced the kitchen to remain open after the fume hood died during a hot summer night. We made it through half the dinner rush before the chef had to be evacuated to the hospital. My manager said she totally understood when I quit. I don't think she was in a spot to quit as well, but it was written on her face that she wanted to. It was obvious the new owner bought the location without any intention to invest a single additional cent into it. He squeezed every last penny out of the place before shutting it down 6 months after the hood fiasco. A real shame. That place was super busy before he took over. I like to imagine he overpaid for it and it ruined him when he treated his employees like rodents. I asked off one day for my freshman orientation at college. Boss told me I had to make a tough decision. Either I wanted to work or I didn't. I'm sorry, minimum wage at a pet store or going to college. You got me messed up. I never went back. I went on holiday for a week and the company sent a replacement to operate my 25-ton excavator. When I came back, my team told me the guy had absolutely no idea how to operate heavy machinery and had nearly killed someone. When they confronted him about his experience, he admitted he didn't have much. Despite my 20 years of experience, he was paid more than I was. So I called my boss for clarification. They said they couldn't pay me more, so I simply switched off my machine and went home. It took them 4 months and multiple drivers to find the right person. After a few weeks, the new driver struck a fiber optic cable, leading to a hefty fine and stopping the project for several weeks. In the end, they went over budget and finished late, but I guess they were happy that they stood their ground with me. My boss had a habit of jumping to conclusions with no evidence. He did this one time too many, blamed me for his mistake, and called me to his office and screamed at me until he was red in the face. I went home and never came back. I worked at a call center for a shitty dial-up provider in like 2008. I worked nights to supplement my day job income, which was low because I was an intern. They had super shady cancellation practices. Customers had to jump through hoops, and it was borderline impossible to cancel. After like 2 weeks, I got a call from a woman whose elderly father tried and failed to cancel many months prior and had racked up all kinds of stupid finance charges and was in collections. She was so sweet and almost in tears because they simply couldn't afford it. I quit on the spot. I called the manager a greasy piece of shit and walked out and called the lady back on my personal cell and apologized and told her how to get out of paying it. My daughter was just born 2 weeks ago and I said I couldn't work overtime anymore and they said they needed me to get my priorities straight and if I can't be there when they need me, they don't want me. I stood up and shook his hand and said, I guess this is it then, good luck, and walked out. I kept the rage inside, but it just about broke out when I received an email 20 minutes later about his shock and disappointment. His disappointment that I chose spending time with my newborn over his business. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.